this variable retention harvest is a form of something called regeneration harvest, in which you open up the stand, and often people then rapidly plant trees, commercial trees, to grow the next crop. First off, we look at it a little differently. If we open up the stand, we really want a period for the shrubs and the forbs, which all sorts of wildlife, including big game like. So we're not going to rush the next stand into production in any way. It's going to take quite a long time. In fact, we're thinking of 100 years. But the federal agencies have stopped all that kind of harvest because of protest, partly protest over clear cutting, and this is not clear cutting, but also they have found that with thinning they can avoid controversies. So we are starting this again. The legislation calls for starting it again. And so people might say, well, okay, I understand the argument at the stand level that we lack these kind of openings that are important ecologically, but they might say, I'm concerned about how extensively you're going to apply this. So we've done a number of calculations, and to create the underpinning for the harvest levels that the senator's talking about. Our results show that in the first decade, approximately 2% of the O&C lands would have this kind of harvest in the first decade. That's the decade to which the forest plan would apply before there'd be revision. In other words, 98% of the O&C lands would not have this kind of harvest in the first decade. So in terms of area, it's a very moderate level of harvest. It is important, though, to the senator's proposal because it produces significantly more volume per acre than does thinning. And it also has a different ecological effect and also enables you to have a sustainable timber supply through time. Out in those industrial clear cuts, there may not be much to eat for the deer and the elk, and also there isn't much residual structure to hide in. And the idea that we're working on is to try to emulate the historical disturbances in these forests. When a fire came through, yes, it created openings, but it would leave patches of live trees, it would leave individual live trees, it would leave dead trees, and then there'd be a rebirth. And in that rebirth, the first stage would mainly be shrubs and forbs with the little trees poking their heads through. Well, of course, that's the forage for the big game and so many other things. And so by combining this period, we call it diverse early successional, kind of a sciencey word. By combining this nurturing of diverse early successional with retaining the structures, we think it'll be much more amenable to big game, both deer and elk. And we're not finding the game, and they're in my pasture. That's where they are. That's where they get something to eat. Yeah. And they really do a number of my apple trees, but we love them.